In this video, we're going to go ahead and show you how to replace your rear wheel hub, located right behind your rear wheels. The process for the driver's side is the same for the passenger side. I'm going to go ahead and remove our center cap. Pop that off, set that aside. Using our 21mm socket, we're going to go ahead and loosen and remove our lug nuts. With our lug nuts removed, go ahead and grab the wheel, remove it, and set it aside. On the back side of a brake caliper, there are two 15mm bolts you want to loosen and remove. Just the lower one here, and then the one up on top. And spin that bolt out. Now we did go ahead and spray down our hardware with some rust penetrant to make things a little bit easier. There's our second bolt. Go ahead and set that aside. At this point here, we're going to go ahead and use our pry tool. Go ahead and work our caliper off, gently wiggling that back and forth. And pop off the caliper. And we're going to use our tool here to go ahead and hang this. We're going to put it through the eyelet there for the bolt. And just going to pull this up top and set it up top, supporting this unit. Using our 18mm socket with an extension, let's go ahead and loosen and remove our caliper bracket bolts. Go ahead and spin out that lower bolt, set that aside. Let's go ahead and repeat for the upper bolt. Now I'm holding the caliper bracket at this point here. You want to be careful because once you pull out this last bolt, like so, the caliper will be loose and it's going to come out with your brake pads. Go ahead and slide that out and set that aside. At this point here, let's go ahead and grab our brake rotor and pull it off. It looks like our brake rotor is stuck on. It's probably held on by the e-brake shoes behind here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use a hammer. I'm going to go ahead and tap the back side of the rotor to try and work this off. And work the front a little bit. Make sure you're wearing safety glasses performing this job. So we're able to break the rotor free. Go ahead and pull that off and set it aside. Using a 32mm socket, we want to go ahead and remove this nut on our spindle. On the back side of our knuckle here, there's going to be 4 E12 inverted Torx bolts. There's one on the bottom here, there's one on the top, and there's 2 on the other side. These bolts go through to the back side of our wheel hub. We need to loosen and remove those before we remove that wheel hub. We did soak these in some rust penetrant here before we attempt to loosen and remove these. That one is just about all the way out. We can leave that one there for now. Let's go ahead and get to that top one and do the same for the top here. We'll get these 2 out. And let's go to the other side. Now we're on the upper rear bolt here. We're using a couple extensions with a swivel. Let's go ahead and try and loosen this one. So on the bottom rear bolt here, we're using the swivel and our inverted Torx. Now at this point here, our bolt won't come out all the way because our tool is now hitting our shock. What we're going to do is we're going to start working the hub out from the front. As the hub comes out, it's going to pull that bolt further inward. We'll then go ahead and use our tool and finish spinning that bolt out as the hub comes out through the front. Now we're just going to use our hammer and we're going to go ahead and tap the hub, work it back and forth. You can see this coming loose. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap the front side of our axle here to try and push that out through the hub. Now I'm going to go ahead and use a punch here in the middle. If you're going to be reusing your axle, you do not want to use a hammer on the end. You will damage the threads. So use a punch in the middle. Go ahead and tap that in. I'm going to go ahead and continue to pull the hub out. Let's go around to the back side and continue removing that bolt. On the back side of the hub here, when you're going to remove it, the hub itself may interfere with a little bit of the e-brake equipment here. What I'm going to simply do is I'm going to use a small pry bar and just kind of move this stuff out of the way as I work that hub out. The other side has a spring in the way, so just kind of move these components over a little bit. Go ahead and push on that axle, work that backing plate back, and continue that until that hub pops off. Now, installing your new hub, you want to make sure that the hub flange is facing the correct way. So the two narrow sections and the two narrow sections, top and bottom, are going to go top and bottom on our axle here. So line this up, slide that onto the splines. And at this point here, we need to go ahead and work our hub in past the emergency brake equipment. So we're just going to use our screwdriver or mini pry bar and pull the springs apart and pop that in. When you install the new hub, you want to pay attention to the width of the flange. The wider section installs at the bottom, the narrow section at the top. If it's installed upside down, you won't get your bolts in, and you can actually risk cross-threading a couple of the bolts while you're trying to install this. So you definitely want to make sure that you install it properly the first time. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing on the axle and the wheel hub, pushing it upward and flexing that axle, allowing me to get that upper bolt up and into position. Now I'm not going to thread that one yet. I just want to get that pushed through the backing plate. And we're going to go ahead and install our lower bolt down below here. We're going to do the same. When we push the axle in, it's giving us some clearance around the boot to get that bolt in. I'm going to put our extension and our socket on, push it through, and try and get that caught on our wheel hub on the other side. So now that we have that bolt caught, I'm just going to go ahead and zip it in a few threads. I'm going to pull it off. I'm going to go ahead and do the upper one now. Let's go ahead and get that one caught. And what we want to do is get all four of these bolts started before we tighten them all down. Want to get our lower rearward bolt started here. All right, so I pushed the axle in and allowed for that upper bolt to fall into place. And let's go ahead and get that started into the hub. I want to go ahead and torque down the 4 bolts to 50 foot-pounds. And I'll go ahead and repeat for the other 2. So I'm going to install our axle nut. And let's go ahead and snug that down. You want to make sure that your e-brakes or your e-brake shoes are in good condition. You have an upper shoe here and a lower shoe here. Ours are wearing okay. I'm just going to use a little bit of sandpaper here, and I'm just going to gently scuff these just to clean them. I'm just using 400 grit sandpaper. Just wipe them down like that. Do the same for the lower. Now, if your shoes are worn, now's the time to go ahead and replace them. Now take your brake rotor, line that up, and you want to slide this right on. Take your caliper bracket, slide that over your caliper, and we're going to go ahead and get the upper bolt started first. Once we get this started a few threads, we're going to go ahead and install the lower bolt. With both of these started, let's go ahead and snug those down. Go ahead and snug both of these down. Let's go ahead and torque these bolts down to 96 foot-pounds. Let's go ahead and remove our support strap here holding our caliper in place. Next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and compress this piston back into the caliper itself. I'm going to use our tool here to go ahead and do so. I'm going to do this slow, and it's going to push this piston back in, pushing the fluid back up into the lines. Go ahead and remove the tool and set your caliper aside. Now we're going to install our brake pads. All right, once we have this side in here, go ahead and repeat for the back side. Go ahead and bring your caliper down into place. Slide that over and get your caliper bolts started. And once you get both of those in, let's go ahead and snug them down. Let's torque down our bolts to 23 foot-pounds. We'll repeat for the upper. Go ahead and spin on a couple lug nuts here. I'm going to go ahead and use our pry bar here to just go between these. Now that we have our lug nuts installed and we have our pry bar here used as a brace to lock this in place, we're going to go ahead and torque down our axle nut to 157 foot-pounds. Once that's torqued, go ahead and remove the lug nuts. Go ahead and install your wheel. I'm going to go ahead and get all of our lug nuts started by hand. Once we get these on, we'll snug them down. Let's go ahead and torque down our lug nuts to 110 foot-pounds. Once we have those torqued, I'll go ahead and install our center cap. And you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.